Jessica Brown is my name. For the age of 32, I am employed as a product manager for a New York-based technology company. Although my life appeared to be going well on the surface, there were complicated family issues at play. I studied computer science at MIT and finished at the top of my class, so I immediately began working for a technological business after college. I got offers from a number of well-known businesses, but I went with a startup that was modest but expanding quickly. The explanation was straightforward. I believed I could perform at my best there. I worked nonstop for the following 5 years, frequently not even taking breaks for sleep. I was the last to depart at night and the first to arrive in the morning. I was promoted to product manager at the young age of 32 as a result of my hard work. After graduating from college, my younger sister Kelly had been living a life of basically freeloading while pretending to be seeking for a career that fit her. She was nonetheless defended by my parents as being sensitive and prone to injury. It just felt like coddling to me. I lived alone in Manhattan, kept a fair distance from such a family dynamic, and gave my job my all. However, a year ago, the company where my father worked suddenly went bankrupt. Triggered by this, I gave up living alone in Manhattan and started living at home with my parents and sister Kelly, who was 2 years younger than me. Our family of 4 couldn't maintain the house without my salary. Initially, I thought we could manage modestly by using my salary and my father's savings. But as time passed, my father's savings ran out, and my salary alone was insufficient. Reluctantly, I followed up on acquaintances' connections and started working on holidays in addition to my main job. Honestly, with no days of rest, both my mind and body were screaming. However, I kept telling myself to endure until my father found a new job and Kelly found work. "Jessica, about tomorrow's dinner, Kelly says she wants to eat steak," my mother started one day. I inwardly sighed and responded, "Yeah, and it looks like we're running low on grocery money. We can't afford fancy meat. Could you add a little more to the grocery fund?" I frowned. "It's only halfway through the month, isn't it?" Then Kelly interrupted. "The living expenses you're giving are too little." "You're joking, right? I'm giving $3,000. "There's no way that's not enough," I retorted. Kelly snorted. "Jessica, don't you know about inflation? $3,000 is not enough for a family of 4. I couldn't hold back my anger anymore. "What do you mean, only? If you have so many complaints, why don't you work and contribute to the household?" "That's not possible. Job hunting costs money. It would be cruel to Kelly." My mother defended her. I cursed inwardly. Despite claiming to be job hunting, Kelly was actually just hanging out at the mall every day. Worse, the living expenses I provided were being given as pocket money to her by our mother. "Enough already. If it's really that hard, why don't we sell this house and move to Grandma's farm? There are jobs there, and living costs would be lower." "Absolutely not. I don't want to return to such a countryside." My mother immediately refused. My grandmother ran a small organic farm in Pennsylvania, and the business was doing well. If we lived with her and helped on the farm, we'd get a salary and could eat fresh vegetables. Life would be easier. But my grandmother was strict, especially about farm work, which my mother disliked. She wanted to avoid the physical labor of farm work. My father always said the same thing. We should all work together to maintain this life instead of relying on Grandma right away. That's what being independent means. I wanted to scream internally. It's ridiculous to call me dependent when I'm the one earning the living expenses in front of a sister who doesn't want to work. Since moving back home, my parents' excessive leniency towards Kelly had become even more apparent. One day, an incident left a deep scar on my heart. I had been working late, preparing for an important presentation, and returned home exhausted. When I entered the living room, Kelly was laughing loudly and drinking wine with her friends. The clock pointed to 1 a.m. "Kelly, I have an early meeting tomorrow. Could you keep it down a bit?" I asked. Kelly looked at me and rolled her eyes exaggeratedly. Oh, work, work, work. You need to have some fun once in a while. Then my mother popped her head out from the kitchen. Jessica, why don't you join them? Kelly's friends are all nice kids. I can't believe this. You know I have an important presentation at tomorrow's meeting, right? Well, my father intervened, Kelly needs to relieve stress too. Job hunting is tough. I was speechless. Kelly's job hunting consisted of shopping at high-end boutiques and cafe hopping with friends. Yet my parents defended her as if she was genuinely struggling to find a job. This unfair treatment had been ongoing since we were children. I remember one Christmas vividly when I was 10 and Kelly was 8. I had been recognized by my school for excellent science grades that year. I had asked Santa for a microscope I wanted, but on Christmas morning, I found a cheap stationery set instead. Meanwhile, Kelly had a costly Barbie dream house in front of her. She hadn't particularly wanted it. She just mentioned it was cute after seeing it in a TV commercial. But I said I wanted a microscope, I protested. My mother responded as if lecturing. Such an expensive item is impossible. You're big enough to understand, right? This pattern repeated over the years. Even when I won awards in club activities, it was dismissed as expected. Yet, there was a big fuss if Kelly achieved average grades. When I wanted to take lessons in something, it was declined because it costs money, whereas money was lavishly spent on Kelly's piano and ballet lessons. The disparity became even more apparent when it was time for college. I wanted to attend MIT, but my parents opposed it, saying, "The tuition is too expensive." Eventually, I managed to get their permission by securing a scholarship and deciding to cover part of the tuition with a part-time job. On the other hand, Kelly's grades were so poor that attending a private university was almost out of the question. Yet my parents sent her to an expensive prep school and even hired a tutor for her. Kelly is delicate. It's for our daughter's future, they would say. But this unfairness gradually hardened my heart. Kelly's room had the latest MacBook, and her closet was filled with high-end brand clothes, all bought by my mother under the guise of being necessary for her studies. Meanwhile, when my old laptop broke down, my parents said they couldn't afford to replace it. Living at home brought back all these memories on a daily basis. One evening, Kelly suddenly said, "I want a new iPhone." "Didn't you just get one last year?" I pointed out. She replied discontentedly, "If it's not the latest model, my friends will laugh at me." My mother seemed to ponder for a moment, but soon said, "Jessica, can you increase the living expenses a bit?" "It's necessary for Kelly." I put down my fork. Unbelievable. My salary is for the family's living expenses, not for Kelly's luxuries. "What luxuries?" Kelly raised her voice. "I'm struggling with job hunting too." "You don't understand my feelings." My father intervened. "Jessica, have some compassion for your sister. We're a family." At that moment, something inside me nearly snapped. Yet, I tried to remain calm. "Then let me ask you, how many companies has Kelly applied to this week? How many interviews has she had?" Kelly was at a loss for words. "I'm in the information gathering stage." "Information gathering?" I laughed sarcastically. "Is browsing for branded goods at the shopping mall what you call information gathering?" "Jessica," my mother scolded, "don't corner Kelly. She's trying her best." "Her best?" My voice trembled slightly. When I started working right after university, no one said I was doing my best. Instead, I was told to try harder. My parents fell silent. Their silence felt like proof of the past's unfairness. That night, as I worked in my room, I overheard a conversation between my mother and Kelly in the living room. "It's okay, Kelly. Tomorrow I'll buy the iPhone with my card." "But what if Jessica gets angry?" "Just keep quiet about it. We're family after all. We should help each other out a bit." Hearing that conversation, I sighed. My parents' attitude was not only hindering Kelly's growth, but also corroding the bonds of our family. However, to change this situation, someone had to stand up, and perhaps that someone might have to be me. One day, news surfaced that Kelly was engaged. She had a boyfriend named Tony, whom she met through a friend's introduction. Tony was indeed a successful investment banker with a promising future. However, it was clear that Kelly was attracted to him for his financial stability. Likely, Kelly had approached Tony with ulterior motives. Using her natural sociability, she must have made her way into his circle. Indeed, Kelly's demeanor in front of Tony was entirely different from how she acted around me. Her usual assertive remarks were gone, and in front of him, she adopted a sweet, doting expression. As their relationship progressed, Kelly's behavior escalated further. "Hey, Jessica." One day, Kelly entered my room. "Tony's parents are going to set us up with a new apartment before we get engaged." "Oh, that's nice," I responded nonchalantly. "But we need to furnish it. I especially want to coordinate the bedroom with luxury furniture." I could guess where this was heading. "You want me to give you money?" "Please, I'll definitely pay you back later," Kelly said, in a tone that would have been hard for the old me to refuse. "The answer is no. That's enough." Then my mother entered the room. Apparently, she had been listening to our conversation from outside the door. "Jessica, why are you being so cold? Your sister is trying to find happiness." "Happiness," I scoffed. "The only reason Kelly approached Tony is his money, and now she's counting on my money too." "What are you saying?" My mother raised her voice. "Kelly truly cares for Tony," she said defensively. "Truly?" I interrupted her. "Did you know she's been searching on marriage sites for men with annual incomes over $200,000? Kelly's face turned pale, and my mother looked bewildered. And before meeting Tony, wasn't she devouring books like How to Marry a Rich Man? "That's..." Kelly faltered. "Can't deny it, can you? I saw your browser history when you asked me to fix your computer." My mother still tried to defend her, but I had enough. "This is why Kelly hasn't grown at all, because you keep coddling her." That night, my father visited my room. "Jessica, Kelly might be a bit spoiled, but she's trying to find her own happiness. It's not right to interfere with that." "Her own happiness?" I said in dismay. "Do you think happiness gained by deceiving and using others is real?" My father fell silent. His silence seemed to affirm my words. The situation took a major turn on a Monday morning. I received a notification from my credit card company about a suspected unauthorized use. When I checked, there was a $15,000 charge at a local luxury jewelry store. Shocked, I thought it necessary to return home early to investigate, fearing that a family member might have lost my credit card and it was being misused. However, when I got home, I was greeted by an unexpected scene. In the living room, my mother and Kelly were joyfully admiring an expensive-looking engagement ring. At that moment, I understood the meaning of the credit card usage notification I had received. "What is this all about?" My voice trembled more from deep disappointment than anger. "Oh, Jessica, listen," my mother responded joyfully. "Kelly has officially been proposed to. Look, isn't it lovely?" Kelly proudly displayed the ring. "And that ring? Oh, I bought it with your card. We're family, so it's only natural to use it for your sister's happiness, right?" I felt like everything was going dark in front of me. "You used my card without permission?" "It's okay. Once I marry Tony, I'll pay it back right away," Kelly said as if she hadn't done anything wrong. "Who gave you permission?" "I don't need permission. We're family," Kelly said proudly. "Besides, this is necessary for making a good impression on Tony, who works on Wall Street." "Is that what this is about? Using someone else's card without permission is a crime." "How are you a stranger?" my mother interjected. "Aren't we family? It's natural for family to help each other out." At that moment, Something snapped inside me. Her words irreparably broke my reasoning. That night, I spent a long time in my room, thinking about the continuous unfair treatment from my childhood, my parents' favoritism, and their recent betrayal. All these combined into a single resolution within me. For the 3 weeks leading up to the engagement party, I acted as usual. My parents and Kelly seemed to believe that I had forgiven the incident with the ring. However, I had been carefully crafting a plan. When the day of Kelly and Tony's engagement party arrived, it was held in the banquet room of the upscale Plaza Hotel. About 100 relatives and friends from both families gathered. Kelly, dressed in a pure white gown, stood next to Tony, smiling happily. My parents proudly spoke about their daughter finding a good match. I debated whether to stay until the end, but ultimately, I decided to request time for a speech. This might be an irreversible choice, but considering the years of unfair treatment and the recent betrayal, I could no longer hesitate. The host introduced me, and I stood in front of the microphone. The lights in the venue focused on me, drawing all eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today for my sister Kelly's engagement party, I began in a calm tone. My parents looked relieved, probably expecting a sisterly blessing to follow. Actually, there is something I need to discuss with you all. I took a deep breath. It's about the beautiful engagement ring on Kelly's finger. That ring was purchased using my credit card, without my permission. The room fell silent. The color drained from Kelly's face. Tony looked bewildered, glancing between his fiancée and me. My family has been living off my income for years. After his company went bankrupt, my father didn't try to find new work, and my mother refused to give up a life of luxury. And my sister Kelly, now 30, has never worked a day in her life. My parents started to rise from their seats in a panic, but I continued. And now they've bought an expensive engagement ring without my consent. They tried to justify this criminal act with the phrase, "because we're family." Tony's parents' expressions turned stern, especially Tony's father, who could barely hide his anger. "Tony," I addressed him, "I don't think you know the real Kelly." "Do you know why she approached you?" Kelly screamed. "Stop it! Please, just stop." But I didn't halt. "She was attracted to your status and income. In fact, before meeting you, she was looking for a wealthy man. I know she searched online for how to find a rich husband and frequented upscale clubs." Tony stood up, his face a mix of anger and sadness. "Is this true, Kelly?" Kelly couldn't respond. She just broke down crying. Then, unexpectedly, someone else stood up, my grandmother. She began to speak in a calm yet dignified voice. "I have something to say," she announced. The room's attention shifted to her. "I've been worried about this family's dynamics for a long time. My daughter and son-in-law's coddling, the excessive leniency towards my granddaughter, and the unfair treatment towards my other granddaughter." My grandmother looked at my parents. "You've taken Jessica's efforts and dedication for granted for too long, and now the results are evident." She turned to me, her eyes filled with understanding and sympathy. "Jessica, I fully understand your feelings, but you don't need to hurt yourself anymore. Enough is enough." Then she turned back to my parents and Kelly. "All of you come to my farm. You will work there and relearn what it means to be human. This is not a suggestion. It's an order." Tony's parents stood up, took their son, and left the venue. The engagement was effectively off. Once again, my grandmother spoke. "So, I heard about the situation from Jessica over the phone. Are you three ready with your bags?" "Are you kidding me?" my mother exclaimed in shock. Just then, a police officer entered. As my bewildered family struggled to comprehend the situation, I explained. "I had already reported it. The unauthorized use of my card is a criminal act. You could go to prison for this." But if you're willing to work hard under Grandma's supervision and show you're ready to change, maybe things can be different. My parents and Kelly were speechless at the sudden turn of events. However, they accepted the situation and chose to work at the farm. I decided to throw them a lifeline for the last time. Some might call it leniency, but they were family after all. That evening, a large moving truck arrived. Their belongings had already been shipped to my grandmother's farm. I decided to rent a new apartment and return to living alone. Kelly agreed to slowly repay the cost of the ring by working at the farm. While setting up my new life, I looked out the window. The evening sky was stained red. Time passed, and a year went by. I had fully adjusted to life in my new apartment. Work was going well, and I had been selected as the leader of a new project. On weekends, I enjoyed my hobby of reading and sometimes went out for brunch with friends. I felt like I had finally regained a normal life. One day, I received a call from my grandmother. "Jessica, how are you doing?" Her voice sounded softer than usual. "Fine, thanks to you." "That's good. It's about Kelly." I caught my breath. "She has changed quite a bit," my grandmother continued. "She's up early, preparing for the day, and takes her work seriously now. She's even getting good reviews from those around her." "Really?" I replied, somewhat skeptically. "Yes, they are all changing little by little," she said. "Your father has relearned the value of work through physical labor at the farm. Your mother is gradually letting go of her attachment to a luxurious life. But the most significant change is in Kelly. She's finally learned what it means to work seriously. She's developed a sense of responsibility. Recently, she even started attending a local vocational school to study agricultural management." "It's all thanks to you, Grandma." "No, it's thanks to you," my grandmother kindly said. "It was your tough decision that woke everyone up." I sometimes wonder if my choice was the right one. Was there a gentler way to do it that night? But now, I'm convinced that it was a necessary decision. Standing on the terrace of my new home, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, I think to myself, complete forgiveness may still be a long way off, but at least my family is trying to change. And I too am slowly moving forward, dealing with the anger from the past. I remember the last words my grandmother said to me. "Life is long, Jessica. You may be hurt and angry now, but time can heal, and sometimes things turn out better than we could have ever imagined." I haven't reached that state yet, but at least now I can walk through life on my own terms. That might be enough for me at the moment. And maybe, someday, we might truly reunite as a family. Holding on to that small hope, I look up at the night sky. The wind on the terrace gently strokes my hair. It feels like the wind is announcing a new beginning. I am 22 years old and currently attend a university in Massachusetts. For the past 3 years, I have been living in an apartment owned by my parents. They are now in their 50s and had bought the apartment as an investment property before moving from Iowa. However, until I went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, my father, due to his stubborn nature, always faced some issue whenever a tenant moved out. During my university years, I lived in that apartment. Living there at a lower rent was possible thanks to my parents' kindness, and I truly appreciate it. The one-bedroom apartment near the university costs $1,250 per month, including utilities. It's not luxurious, but it was my little sanctuary. I grew up in an Amish family, raised in a strict environment, especially being a girl. My parents always taught that a woman's role was to support and serve men. I have struggled with this idea and searched for my own path, but I still feel bound by my family's expectations. Growing up, I had very limited exposure to technology, but now, ironically, I am studying computational and systems biology. Talking a bit about my family, I have one sister. My sister, Anna, was always treated specially within the family. Anna is smart and attractive, seen by our parents, especially my father, as the perfect daughter. She always received the best of everything. Every time we fought, I was always blamed and scolded to get along. During my teenage years, I saved my allowance month by month and finally bought the dress I had longed for. However, that same weekend, Anna wanted to go to a concert, and my father demanded that I give her my dress, saying, "I'll pay for the dress." But that payment for the dress never came back to me. I cried for days but had no way to change the situation. Strict Amish rules somehow didn't apply to Anna, and I felt like I was the only one affected. This was the catalyst for me wanting to cherish my own life more. After graduating high school, Anna lived a lavish urban life in New York and worked for a luxury tech startup. When I moved to Massachusetts, Boston and New York were physically close, but emotionally distant, and Anna never suggested we meet. We were not close sisters, so our relationship remained mostly superficial. Living in the same region but not meeting didn't bother me much because it symbolized freedom from my harsh childhood. But a new twist in the story awaited. Apparently, Anna's company went bankrupt a few months ago, and she hadn't told anyone. Though everyone thought she would bounce back quickly, reality was different. Now, Anna has lost both her job and home, and her transparent acts of pretense have begun. Last week, my mother called in a desperate voice, telling me how difficult Anna's situation was, and she pleaded that the family needed to help. I expected to be asked to let Anna live with me for a while. Though reluctant, I thought it was inevitable since we are family. But my mother's idea was completely different. Rather, she demanded that I move out and find a new place for myself. It was fine for her to let Anna live there. But the problem was that my mother said, "I want you to continue paying the $1,250 monthly rent so Anna can live there." My parents wanted to maintain the slight income from that house, but disliked taking money directly from Anna. I was shocked and protested, "Mom, I'm still a student and can't afford to rent my own place." However, my mother wouldn't change the subject and only tried to make me feel guilty. She emphasized repeatedly how tough Anna's situation was and that I should fulfill my role as a family member. At that moment, I felt like I had stepped into an absurd, surreal world. Evicting a child who is paying the rent and letting another live there without any burden seemed utterly unreasonable. I argued that Anna was an adult and should take responsibility for her life. But my mother tearfully criticized me, asking, "Are you going to abandon a family member in need?" Indeed, the current rent is very affordable, and finding another place with such conditions would be impossible. My father also let me down. Instead of helping when I expressed my position on the phone, he just repeated, "Your mother is right. Everyone must sacrifice something for the family." He also went on, "You should be proud to fulfill your role as a woman and support your sister in need." I wanted to scream, "What are you talking about? What was all the sacrifice I had made until now for?" I have been working part-time and fully dedicating myself to my studies to cover my living expenses. When will my efforts be recognized? For the past 2 years, I have received full scholarships and have never burdened my parents with tuition fees. Of course, I am not perfect either. Sometimes, to maintain peace within the family, I have suppressed my own feelings and complied with my parents' unreasonable demands. I have even missed my best friend's birthday party to attend a family gathering I really didn't want to go to. This was because my father said, "Family comes first." I'm not proud of it, but I have played the role of the good daughter many times. However, something inside me broke this time. It might be due to the pressure of the upcoming final exams, or perhaps I have finally reached my limit of always suppressing my own feelings to prioritize others. I finally took a firm stand and said, "No. How am I supposed to abandon my own life and continue paying rent for Anna, who will just be freeloading?" Their reaction was as if I had declared I was running away to join the circus, looking at me as if I were insane. Over the phone, my mother called me a selfish and ungrateful daughter, and then hung up, My father sent a long message stating, "You are betraying the family and your faith." Afterward, I continued to struggle for days, convincing myself that I was the worst daughter and sister in the world. Of course, I understand Anna's difficult situation and don't lack the desire to help. But is it wrong to think it's unfair that I'm expected to financially support myself to rescue their precious daughter? Is it really so bad that I just want to continue living with my current cheap rent? After all, they are my parents. Shouldn't they naturally want to help me? All I want is for my life to be a little easier. I understand that Anna is not malicious, but she has always gotten things easily. Does she truly understand how hard I have worked and struggled to obtain what I have? She has always been loved and privileged. She looks good, scores high on exams without studying, and had a smooth job search. She gained experience in a startup, and my parents kindly supported her when she was in trouble. However, they seem unaware of the unfairness. Honestly, I cannot deny feeling a bit happy that her startup failed. If they want Anna to live in my apartment, they have the right as the owners. But I am not willing to continue paying while I can't even secure my own place to sleep. I started looking for affordable rooms near campus, but with the semester starting, there are almost none available, and it's been tough. I want to stand by my beliefs, but the guilt constantly weighs on me. I have always felt this way. I've been put last all my life, and changing that mindset isn't easy. I refuse to move out and continue paying rent so that my sister could live for free. Is it wrong for me to protect myself first? Or am I really the selfish and self-centered daughter my parents claim I am? Honestly, I question everything. Part of me just wants to keep the peace and comply without causing problems in the family. But another part of me screams that this is the perfect opportunity to stand up for myself and stop being trampled on like before. I have always felt lacking and tired of my dreams and hopes being pushed aside for my sister. Is it so wrong to want to put myself first for once? This time, I am proud of myself for valuing my feelings and thoughts and standing up. Let me explain about myself here. I come from an Amish background, but I no longer live in that community. I left home at 18 to go to college after graduating from an Amish school. Getting the necessary qualifications was a struggle. That's another story. But even if I'm not living the traditional Amish life now, its values and expectations still affect me. Since I use technology for college, some might question if I'm really Amish. I am Amish, but how to maintain the traditions varies among individuals. My family is conservative, but that doesn't mean I'm not Amish. I've just chosen a different path. I am making choices different from those who say a daughter should just obey her parents and be grateful for a place to stay. I'm not a child anymore, and I pay my own tuition. Just because I live in my parents' apartment, no one has the right to whimsically change my life. To those who say, as the eldest, you should prioritize and sacrifice for your sister, or you should give up your place for your sister, I want to say that it's not the 1800s anymore. Birth order shouldn't dictate anything among siblings. Being the eldest doesn't mean I'm a tool to be used at others' convenience. My dreams and goals are just as valuable as anyone else's, regardless of gender or birth order, and I shouldn't have to sacrifice myself for my sister Anna. It's curious that no one questions why Anna, who has worked before, wouldn't be able to sort out her life. If our roles were reversed, some might wonder why I continue my relationship with my family if they are too controlling. But it's not that simple. I love them, even if their opinions are unacceptable. They are still my parents. Cutting ties with family is a serious decision and not one to be taken lightly. I hope that by standing my ground and setting clear boundaries, I can build a healthier relationship. People say, just get over it. But those words are easy for someone not in my situation. Even for a moment, try to imagine being in my shoes. How would you feel if your wishes were always postponed and you were expected to remain in your sister's shadow? What if you thought you were starting to live your own life, but your family was about to ruin it for your favorite sister? This isn't just about the apartment. It's about the fundamental way things are. Asking for basic respect and consideration from my family is not a sign of being spoiled. Having my own dreams and goals is not an attitude problem. I'm not seeking special treatment. I just want to be treated fairly. Some might ask, why don't you move out and relieve your parents of the rent? I would, if the situation allowed. But are you aware of the current rental market in Massachusetts? Even with scholarships and part-time jobs, life is pretty tough. I really dislike asking my parents for financial help, and I manage as best I can with the situation at hand. If I gave up this affordable housing, I'd have no choice but to stay at a friend's place. But I'm not good at living with others. I understand that family should help each other. However, I have always put my feelings last. I can no longer endure this repetition. There's no need for me to push myself for my sister, and I don't think it's wrong to prioritize my feelings. It's about time Anna became an adult and took responsibility for herself. My parents should stop sacrificing me to favor her. Months have passed, and despite my objections, my parents allowed Anna to move into the apartment. Last weekend, she arrived with her belongings and made herself comfortable in the bedroom, while I ended up sleeping on the couch. I know I shouldn't be paying, but I can't stand receiving calls of disappointment from my parents now that Anna is already here. Just because I gave up my place for her, it's unreasonable to be criticized as if I've done something world-shattering. That's what my parents said, not my own thoughts. However, there is one thing I cannot compromise on: continuing to live here. I am determined to stay and keep paying the rent, but it's hard to express how stressful and uncomfortable this situation is. Even when I'm studying for final exams, Anna relaxes all day, leaving trash everywhere, acting as if she's on an extended vacation. I'm desperately trying to get through each day. What makes it even harder is her lack of urgency in finding a new job or place to live, continually saying, "I'm just trying to sort things out, please understand." She seems completely unaware of how much her actions disrupt my life. She eats the food I buy, uses my toiletries, and even treats my face towel as if it's hers. My parents call to check on Anna to see if she's comfortable. Meanwhile, they completely ignore me, never asking how I'm doing or if I need help. It feels like I've disappeared from their sight. Living with Anna has been incredibly stressful, especially when I come home exhausted from a long day of classes to find her hosting an impromptu brainstorming session with her tech friends. Her friends gather around the room, littered with pizza boxes and beer cans, loudly discussing the next innovative app around the coffee table. They act as if I don't exist, making no effort to clean up. I tried to do my homework on the couch, but their loud voices pierced my ears. Just when I thought it might quiet down, someone shouted, "This is it! A brilliant idea!" And the noise escalated. This went on for 2 hours until I finally reached my breaking point and asked them to keep it down. "I need to get my homework done," I explained. They looked at me as if I had made an unreasonable request. It seemed that the concept of empathy did not exist in their world. Anna casually said, "We are here creating the next big idea. When we become rich, you'll thank us." I felt irritated that her hypothetical future success seemed to justify my current suffering. In the end, I had no choice but to head to the campus library to find a place where I could concentrate. When I returned, they were gone, but the room was still a mess. Fueled by anger, I spent an hour cleaning up cracker crumbs and dried ear stains from the floor. It's infuriating enough that Anna takes my living space and family support for granted, but for her to bring her annoying friends and act as if I'm wrong for wanting a quiet space is beyond my patience. I try to stay calm and focus on my studies, but every time this happens, it becomes clear that Anna does not consider my life at all. I can't stand this situation any longer. I continue studying while trying to keep my sanity, but it's getting harder every day. Exhausted from sleeping on a narrow sofa and anxious about how I would pay rent if I had to leave this house. I cut down on food expenses, which also affects my academic performance. I feel suffocated, and it seems like no one notices. Even when I seek help, it feels like I'm expected to keep smiling through the chaos that has turned my world upside down. There are moments when I want to scream, shed tears, throw everything away, and never return. But I know I have to persevere here. I didn't work this hard just to give up. I tell myself that moving to a distant place after graduating is just a temporary trial. However, sometimes that goal seems so far away I can't even see it. 2 months passed, and I was busy with final exams. It was an extremely tough time, but I finally feel like I see a way out. Anna's situation hasn't progressed much. It's stuck. The excessive coddling of Anna by our parents continued, and I seriously considered asking a friend to take her in. But then something surprising happened. One night, Anna and I had a fierce argument about her leaving dirty dishes around the apartment. Fed up with her self-centered attitude and lack of consideration for others, I tearfully told her how negatively her presence affected me. For the first time, she genuinely listened to me. Anna finally realized how much stress she was putting on me. She had been so overwhelmed with her own issues that she hadn't spared any thought for others. She apologized to me, told our parents she would move out, and said they should respect my living situation. Furthermore, she even offered to pay back the rent for the time she lived there. I was taken aback by her offer. I hadn't imagined Anna would stand up to our parents in my place. However, our parents rejected her proposal. My mother tried to make me feel guilty and kept crying, while my father seemed disappointed. But Anna and I stood our ground against our parents. It's not completely resolved yet, but I continue to hold on to hope and focus on finishing this semester. I excelled in my final exams and secured a summer internship. It feels like I've achieved a goal for the first time in a long while. I now feel in control of my own life. I understand there are still many challenges before our family can truly see each other as equals, but the steps we've taken and what I have learned to assert myself have given me great confidence. A year has passed and my life has changed significantly. After graduation, I started working as a software engineer at a renowned biotechnology company in Boston, earning a stable salary. I finally rented my own apartment, deciding to move out of my parents' apartment. It was a liberating moment for me. My relationship with Anna is gradually healing. As promised, she paid the rent for her stay. More importantly, she finally acknowledged the struggles I had faced. Currently, she is working part-time, living a less flashy life, and has become a humble and kind person. My relationship with my parents remains complicated. This is especially true for my father, who does not acknowledge my choice of a conventional career. However, my relationship with my mother is slowly improving. Last month, she visited my apartment for the first time, and although she was a bit shocked to see a computer on my desk, she has started to recognize my achievements. Leaving the Amish community to forge a life in the technology industry was not an easy choice, but the most important lesson I've learned over the years is that I should not define my worth based on comparisons with others or traditional expectations. Recently, I had lunch with Anna. During that time, she suddenly apologized for our relationship in childhood. She has finally begun to understand how harmful it was for our parents to always compare us and pit us against each other. Now we are trying to build a new relationship as sisters, not based on competition or jealousy, but on sharing joy and celebrating each other's successes. Freed from our parents' expectations and traditional values, we can finally become true sisters. I can now confidently say that this is the beginning of my life. While I still hold some Amish values dear, they are no longer imposed but chosen by me. This experience taught me to have my own opinions and the courage to express them, and that might have been the most important discovery of all.